Hey everybody, it's Monika and welcome to my channel where I help social workers, therapists, and helping professionals deepen their level of self-awareness while increasing their competence and confidence in the profession. So for today's video, I wanted to answer the questions that you all asked me in my 10 careers in social work video, this one right here. So if you're interested in this topic, then please keep watching. Welcome back to my channel. So about 2 years ago, it's crazy to even believe that it's been 2 years, but it has. It's been about 2 years ago since I created this 10 careers in social work video, and the video did really well. We got 77,000 views on the video and about 130 some comments. So what I wanted to do is, I'm going to update the video, by the way, just because so many things have changed. But one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to go through the comments that you all asked, and I wanted to answer your questions because I think a lot of you have questions about the amount of money that you can make. Some of you challenge some of the things that I mentioned in the video, so I wanted to clear that up. And then also I wanted to share with you what some social workers put in the comment section in terms of what they're making in their career. So basically with this video, what I want to do is one, clear up a lot of misconceptions about the work that you can actually do with your social work career. Number two, I want to make it clear the route you can take if you choose not to go the traditional social work route, because there are options available for you. And then three, someone pointed out to me in the comment section that I didn't actually share 10 careers. So I want to give you the 10th one on this video. First, let's get into the salaries that the social workers shared. Two, we'll get into the questions. And then three, at the end of the video, I'll share with you my 10th career that I think a lot of you can potentially explore. So first, let me say, I don't want any social worker, therapist, or social service professional switching their major or making any hasty career decisions because of the advice that I give on my channel. I always try to say that I want you to do your due diligence and I want you to see what applies in your state or in your country. When I say do your due diligence, what I mean by that is I want you to do your own research. I want you to ask people in your own community. I want you to find people who are doing the type of work that you're doing. I want you to take copious notes, and then I want you to make a strategic and informed decision that works for you in your situation. Now, I do try to provide you with resources to help you make an informed decision, such as my resume templates, my private practice intake forms, and my 90-day career plan. So all of those things are designed to help you navigate your career, but ultimately the choices and decisions that you need to make, do what's best for you and do what works in your situation. Because what I want you to keep in mind is this channel reaches people from all over the world. I have people from Nigeria, Bangladesh, all parts of Europe commenting on my videos, so I couldn't possibly cover every aspect of every career. So we had 6 social workers who graciously shared the salary that they're making in their state. So let's get into the 6 salaries that were shared. Number 1 says, I'm a medical social worker in New York with 2 years and 6 months experience. I make $82,000 a year. Number 2, LCSW therapist can make 6 figures here in Florida. 3, I work at Kaiser, which is easily the highest paying, and I'm on my 2nd year and make $144,000. I highly suggest if you live in California, we also have pensions. Good luck to everyone out there. Thank you so much for your transparency and sharing your salary with the community. Number 4, someone said, I went government and became a children's social worker for DCFS in LA County. I was promoted to supervisor in 2014 and I make a 6-figure salary. I didn't bother getting my LCSW because I work policy work with courts, I train and manage. To me, going the administrative route was more fulfilling and more lucrative. Great benefits as this is not taken out of the salary. It's given to me as an additional monthly allowance. My benefits costs come out of the allowance as well. So if you're in California, it sounds like DCFS could be a potential opportunity for you to look into. Number 5, the VA LCSWs can make up to $100,000. And number 6, New York City salary for public hospitals is $75,000 for medical social workers. If you have a LCSW, you can obviously get more. So I hope that kind of shines a light on some of the opportunities that can be available for you with the type of licensure that you have, as well as depending on your state. So now we have about 6 questions, so I'm going to answer each one of those individually as well. The first question says, where can I get a job? I'm a social worker with experience of 6 years. So many of the options that I shared in that 10 careers in social work video could be potential opportunities for you. But the bigger question for me is, if you have 6 years of experience, what is your level of expertise and what is your passion? What is your interest? What type of work do you want to do? The opportunities out there are endless. There's a limitless amount of things that you can do with a social work degree. With 6 years of experience, I'm imagining you would want to be transitioning from a generalist level of professionalism to a more expertise level or mastery. I would say really think about what is the type of work that you enjoy doing. Do you have a depth of knowledge in that area of expertise? And then you can start looking at potential opportunities that are available within that industry. Sometimes I think we make the mistake of looking for careers based off the amount of money that it has the potential to earn us, but we don't always do the work to make sure that that job is going to be in alignment with our interests and with our values. So I really want you to give that some thought. The second question that was asked is, do you need a master's degree for each of these or a bachelor's degree? So the ones that I mentioned, no, you absolutely don't need a master's degree. I know for school social work, I don't think you need a master's. You don't even have to technically do school social work if you work in a school. There are other types of positions that you can do where you don't need a master's. So say, for example, if you work for an after school program, that after school program can still be housed and based in the school, but you don't need a master's to do that work. But for a medical social worker, for example, depending on the level of work that you're doing in the hospital, you might need a master's degree for that. If you're doing intakes in the emergency room, sometimes you don't need a master's for that. Or if you're doing assessments and working on a psychiatric unit, then you might need a master's for that. The next question asks, what about pastoral social work? Is there anything like that and can it be enhanced? I thought that was an interesting question. I've not specifically heard of pastoral social work, but I can definitely see how you can marry the work that you do as a social worker with the work that you might do in a church or congregation. What that can look like is maybe doing couples counseling, relationship counseling, premarital counseling. That way you're giving the spiritual counsel and spiritual advice, but also operating within the context of your social work degree. And this doesn't even specifically have to be offered through a church. You can look into nonprofit organizations that are either pro-life or pro-choice, depending on what your political views are. And those organizations sometimes have positions available where you can work in a church setting, or where their primary demographic is church members. Then someone said, I might have to switch to number one. Therapists didn't even make the list. Therapists absolutely could have made the list, but the reason why I didn't add therapists in the top 10 is because the income that you can make as a therapist is limitless. You can literally design the career that you want. And because there's no cap around the amount of money that you can make, it really didn't fit in a top 10 list to me because I wanted to give you careers that potentially had a cap to it, and therapy isn't one that traditionally does, especially if you go into private practice. There's so much opportunity there, so I don't want you to give up your desire or your interest in therapy if that is in fact what you want to do. Next, someone said, I'm so surprised you can practice as a speech pathologist with a social work degree. Now, this is where I need to clarify. Now, I did add speech pathologists on my list of 10 careers in social work, but I don't want you to think that you can practice as a speech pathologist with a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in social work. What I mean is you can absolutely do a bachelor's degree in social work and then a master's in speech pathology and then get all of the required certifications and training as well as licensure as a speech and language pathologist, and then you'll be able to enter into those professions. So there is absolutely a path for social workers to be speech and language pathologists, but you can't do it with a traditional bachelor's and master's degree in social work without having any of the requirements of the speech and language pathologist certifications and licensure. The next question was, in what category does a immigration social worker fall in? I actually think that's its own category. That could have been another career on the list, and I don't think that we talk about that work enough. When doing social work in immigration or with migrants, however you define the term, there are a lot of opportunities that can be available with you doing that work. One is when you have people coming into the country, they need to get settled. They need to be established within a community. They need to get access to resources. They need to get housing They need to get access to housing. They need translation services. There's so many things that migrants need when they're coming into the community, and social workers are best positioned to help with those things. Not only that, another opportunity that's available for social workers is to do immigration evaluations. So basically what an immigration evaluation is, it's a mental health assessment that a licensed social worker or clinician will complete with the family who's migrating into the U.S., and it's geared toward helping the family with the immigration process. And there are two parts to the evaluation. There's the interview and then there's the written report. And there are different types of evaluations that you can do. So again, do your due diligence to see what's available for you in your state and what opportunities can be available with the licensure that you have. But absolutely, doing work with the migrant community is absolutely an opportunity that's available for social workers. And when the person made that comment and I was reviewing it, it made me think of another assessment that social workers can do as well. Now this is a number 10, so this is like a bonus to number 10, so make sure you watch to the end because I'm going to give you that one as well. So there's also something that social workers can do called a court evaluation. And the salary for a forensic social worker, depending on the state, can be between $63,000 and $95,000 a year. The next question says, I have done my MMS, master's and social science degree in Bangladesh. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. My major subject was social work, but now I live in the US in Michigan. Can I have any job with this Bangladesh certificate, or do I need to do any course or anything? I would definitely say look at the licensing requirements within the state. So if you're in Michigan, I would definitely check with the social work board within the state of Michigan. They'll definitely tell you whether or not your certification is transferable and if you'll be able to conduct social work in the state of Michigan. So I think that's the best place to start. The next comment says, very informative, but I do find the order and salaries to be a little off. Easily the highest paying job in social work is private practice if you have an LCSW. Common hourly rates are $150 to $200 an hour. Second highest paying is definitely medical social work, but choose your hospital wisely for best pay, benefits, and retirement. I work at Kaiser, which is easily the highest paying, and I'm on my second year and made $144,000 this year. I highly suggest if you live in California. We have pensions. Good luck to everyone out there. So this one was the same as the one that I mentioned when the social worker was sharing the salary, but I also put it here because they mentioned about how much you can make in private practice, which I absolutely believe is true. If you go the private pay route, you can absolutely charge $150 to $200 per session. You have to keep in mind, though, that if your goal is to work with a specific demographic, maybe it's working with the migrant community, or maybe it's working with Hispanic community or the African American community in low income families, they're not paying $150 and $200 a session. So, and that's where you have to decide, how do you want to design your career? Because although you serve clients in private practice who can pay $150 and $200 a year, that doesn't mean that you can't do other type of work, volunteer work, or giving financially, such as donating money or donating your time to support the causes that matter to you. So don't think just because you're not able to service those clients that you can't work with them at all, because you still can. But know that most people in low income communities, they're not shelling out $150 and $200 for therapy. That's a very specific and targeted demographic who can pay that amount of money for those services. The next question says, which field can I get into to get a job with a certificate in social work and community development? I think this is a really good question, and community development is very broad. When I think community development, I think in terms of two positions or two types of work. One is community development in terms of fundraising, so meaning you work with grant funding, donations. You can do that in higher ed, working with an alumni relations office or working in advancement. It's not necessarily community development, but it is development in terms of how higher ed defines it. So if that's the type of work that you're interested in, I worked in alumni relations. I absolutely love that work. So you could check with your local university, look in their development department. That's That's the department that handles their fundraising. They're communicating with their donors, bringing alumni back on campus. So if you've graduated and you've been getting calls from your university about donating and giving money and supporting this initiative or supporting this student, that's the development office of the university. They're sending out those mailers. They're trying to get you to support and give money back to the college or university that you attended. That's an opportunity that's available for you as a social worker as long as you can clearly communicate your transferable skill sets. So that's one element of development. Now, you specifically mentioned community development. So when I think of that, I think of community block grants. I think of housing and programs and initiatives that help stabilize the community. So with that, you can check with your local urban league or with your city or county government. You can do a search for community development block grant. And from that, you can see organizations or foundations who support that work in your community. And then you can reach out to those organizations about available positions. Oftentimes, those are the positions where they say social work or related field. So if you have a social work degree, that's great. Or if you have a related degree, such as psychology, criminal justice, or some type of social services certification, maybe at the associate level, I would still see what they require. But oftentimes with those positions, they look more at your qualifications and your experience than they do at your degree. So just check within your local community. The next comment says, "Greetings, Manika. I'm looking to become a social worker. I wanted to know, do I have to have a master's degree to become one? I currently have an associate's degree in education, but now want a bachelor's in social work." You do not need a master's degree to become a social worker, but you do need a bachelor's degree to be considered a social worker. And there are a lot of positions and different types of work that you can do depending on the population that you want to work with. Most of those positions might be micro-level social work jobs. So that's something to consider. Now, if you want to move into meso level work or macro level work, sometimes those positions require a little bit more expertise, but it doesn't mean that you can't, again, communicate transferable skill sets. When I transferred into a macro level job, 90% of my experience was direct practice. It was at the micro level. So just because you have a lot of micro level experience, it doesn't mean that you can't transition up. But if you ultimately want to do social work, I would advise you, yes, would need a bachelor's degree. You can, again, do those micro level jobs. But if you find that the income is just not sustainable and you want to level up and have more options in terms of what you can do with your degree, then a master's degree might be the best route to go. The next question was, is school social work another name for a guidance counselor? And the answer is no. Someone put in the comments, I guess they're not calling guidance counselors anymore. They're calling them school counselors. When I was growing up and when I was in school, they were called a guidance counselor. So whether or not you call them a school counselor or a guidance counselor is not the same as a school social worker. So how I mentioned before, how you can work in an after school program and still work in a school setting, but not necessarily be a social worker. All social work that happens in schools is not school social work. School social work is mostly when you're providing classroom-based interventions or individual interventions to students to help them maintain in the classroom. So whether that's pulling them out of the classroom for a social skills group or some type of coping skills if they're experiencing difficulty in the classroom, those are the things that you're helping them with: social emotional learning, emotional intelligence, being able to manage their anger, and conflict resolution. So that's what you do as a school social worker. As a guidance counselor, you're helping them navigate the courses and classes that they need to take to graduate from high school or to transition from middle school to high school. There's no clinical aspect to being a guidance counselor. It's all about helping you transition in each phase of your education. The next question is, can you tell me if there are studies for a period of 2 years in the community college in order to be a social worker? So there are no 2-year programs for you to be a social worker, but you can do a 2-year certification program and do like a community worker or community advocate. You can get a certificate for that. But in terms of being called a social worker, you have to have a 4-year degree for that title. So I would say look at your local community college. Some don't even have social work programs. Some do. So I would say look into the program and then see what type of certification that they offer. Now you can use those courses that you take at the associate level, and then those can transition to your bachelor's program. So you might be able to get credit for those courses. And again, with an associate's degree, you can find opportunities that are available, but it might be limited if you don't have the degree and qualifications that are needed for the role. And the last question is, I have a BA in psychology, but I'm thinking of becoming a social worker and getting an MSW. I would like to know if social workers have to do counseling at all times and in all settings, or is it just helping people by just following up or mostly providing resources that can help? I get anxiety when speaking in groups or just being the center of attention. Therefore, this is one of my biggest concerns. So I want to read what I message back, or the comment that I wrote back to this person, and I'm hoping that the comment that I wrote, that you find that helpful if you have this same question. So what I wrote is, no, you can literally build the career you desire with a social work degree. Any passion that you have for helping others can be created with a social work degree. You are not boxed into counseling or therapy, working with individuals, or working in groups. You can work remotely and you never have to engage and have face-to-face contact with your clients at all. So I think that's so important to know, because I think oftentimes when people think about our profession, they think about us working in foster care or children's services, and along with social services, that includes CPS, or removing children from the home. They really don't understand the scope of what you can do with a social work degree. With psychology, you can oftentimes find different roles using your degree. So again, that's one of those degrees where they say psychology, social work, or related field, but you're specifically trained on how to do therapy. The great thing about social work is that not only are you trained and can do therapy, you also have an integration of social policy, social justice, and human behavior in the social environment. So you're not just looking at the psychology of a person, you're also including those environmental factors, those social factors that play into the social issues that we have in our communities. And that's what opens you up to such a broad range of career opportunities, because our lens is so much wider. So basically with this video, I wanted you to see the huge opportunities that are available for you within the social work profession. And thank you all so much for the questions that you provided. Now for number 10, the opportunity that I wanted to mention to you was the work that I'm doing on YouTube as a social work content creator. There's no cap to the income. You can teach what you know. You can design the career that you love. And if you have a passion for reaching a larger demographic of people all across the world with a targeted message, making content online, creating digital products, and having ways for people to learn from your expertise is another way that you can expand your social work career outside of traditional roles. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like, subscribe, or share. I'll be releasing more videos to help you deepen your level of self-awareness and to increase your competence and confidence in the profession. Thank you all so much for watching. We're on the road to 100K. Be well.